Hello there, my name's Sarah Jane and I am your host of Mundane Magic, which is a podcast for anyone who finds magic in ordinary life. The seasons, the hedgerows, folk stories, bit of poetry and the art of making things. I'm an eclectic witch and an art maker with over 20 years of practice, and this is my fireside. I won't be scripting anything special. This will be just me having a chat and rambling about magic in the mundane things of life. So expect some nature rambles maybe, and some creative chat, and just generally talking about life and how we can find magic in the little things. So I live in Nottinghamshire in the UK, and I've just recently moved house. So there's me, my husband Kev, and two cats. We have Noel, who is 15 and just been diagnosed. He's now diabetic, poor soul. And we have Frank, who is a big beast, big hairy beast. He is 6 on the 1st of April. And we think he's maybe a little bit short-sighted or a little bit struggling a little bit because he does bump into things now and again. So we keep our eyes on little Frank. But they are my companions as I sit in my studio each day and decide what lovely art magic I'm going to share. So I decided to do the podcast again. I have done a podcast before, and then life just got too busy to do it until I realised just before I was going to move house that I quite liked just sort of chatting to myself. I thought you might like me to chat to you too. So yeah, it's April here in the UK, and things are starting to grow now. Now I have a new garden, and it is what I can only describe as sort of basic. There is a patch of grass, some overgrown wilderness at the bottom, and some cracked concrete as a patio, and an enormous, and I mean enormous, Leylandii, which is on the border between us and our neighbour. So before we moved in, we decided that we wanted to create a nice patio area. So we've actually got somebody booked in to do a nice patio area for us before we start work on the actual garden. And I'm so dying to get in and create my own little witch's garden with some lovely herbs and things like that. But I've got to be patient. So at the moment we're just tidying up in the house. I'm setting the studio up and just making some plans and ideas of what we might like to do with the garden once we've got the patio in place. So yeah, the Leylandii. When I say enormous, it has grown to its maximum height. So when we bought the house, my husband had all these ideas of the Leylandii was going to come down. He was going to have a word with the neighbours and come to some arrangement where he would take the tree down because it does take over the garden. So armed with this, I'm thinking, oh right, okay, what if the neighbours are a bit weird? What if they don't like us and we have these arguments about this enormous tree? So I've been a little bit nervous about it. Anyway, on the day that we moved in, we were going out in the car and I could see this person at the bottom of the drive next door as we were driving off, furiously waving his arms and grinning so much. And I thought, that must be the neighbour. So I tried to wave to him at the back of the car so he didn't think I was ignoring him. And then when we got back, I could see he was hanging around on the front garden, and Kev was knocking about on having a phone call on the front, and I could see that this old fella was trying to get his attention. So I went out. I thought, come on, I'll meet the neighbour. And he was lovely. He was wearing his black beanie hat. He'd got a what looks like an old golden retriever called Ben. And he said, hello, my name's Chris, and it's so nice to meet you. And introduced me and Kev. And we just had a little chat, and he said, you'll like it up here. We're really nice up here. We always look out for each other, but we don't bother each other. Which I thought was quite sweet. And he was telling me all about the neighbours and everything like that. And then he mentioned the tree. Uh-oh. So he said, you see, the trees in the garden, they're really good because they stop the gardens being waterlogged. Now, having realised that he had lived in the house since 1968, a long time, I thought he's seen a lot, so maybe the gardens were waterlogged and they put the trees in there to help drain some of the water away. And also he said, and they are lovely, aren't they? So he obviously loves these trees. There are 3 in a row, but there's one main big one anyway. So later on that day, I went outside to have a look at the tree. And we realised that it actually didn't block out any light to us, and the sun was still getting down to the bottom of the garden. And I looked up into them, and they were alive. They were alive with birds and noise and different songs being sung and things rushing about, and it was just magical. It was a magical mundane moment when I realised that this was a tree of life. And I had a peep at the neighbour's garden as well, and it was a little bit higgledy-piggledy and overgrown, but again it was full of life. There were different birds flying around, there was a squirrel running here and there, and I was so happy. I was so happy that that tree was there. This tree that we thought that we wanted to cut down and get rid of suddenly became a part of my new life. So I said to my daughter, I said, well, the tree's got to stay, but I think I'm really, really happy about it. In fact, I know I'm really happy about it. And I said, maybe we ought to give the tree a name. So Sophie said, I think you should call it Pete. So I said, why Pete? And she said, well, Pete, it's like soil, isn't it? So he's got his roots in the soil. So Pete's a good name. She says, I think you should call him Hairy Pete because he looks hairy because of the Leylandii branches. So we now have a tree in our garden called Hairy Pete that I love. And it was just a little story I wanted to share with you. And I probably will be talking about Hairy Pete as I find out all the different birds and things that are living in it as we move out into the garden later on once the patio is done. For the meantime, we are settling into the house, trying to find places for everything. And our current strategy is to just find a place. Don't worry about the organisation. Just find a place for the things we want to keep and get rid of the rest. So this is me signing off from my first podcast. And I'm off to do a little bit more finding places for my things as I look out the window and see what's happening with Hairy Pete. So I'll see you again next time. Thank you for listening.